Well, hello, hello. It has been a hot minute, but here we are, back to the old grind. Now, before we begin, let me get a few things out of the way. Creativity has been an up and down hill this week, for me at least. I'm curious to know what projects you got into today. But for now, we have two projects of which I need to work on. Number one being this comic page. I wanted to get the coloring finished. As you can see, it looks mostly done. There's just some background detail and some shading and lighting that I want to try and touch up a bit on. Afterwards, we're going to look into doing an animatic, as I have some line art that needs to be done. I have all the sketches finished, of course, but not the line art per se. So, that is what we're going to do. I am, though, I apologize if I go on a little bit of a rant today. Not for nothing serious, but I am super excited for that new episode of the Digital Circus. I don't really know if anyone else here knows about it, but just be aware that there is a brand new episode coming out and I am excited for it. So I may or may not talk a little bit about it. It's just something about independent projects I just find very entertaining. Not only in the sense that they're, at least to me, feel more heartfelt and put together, but there's also a human element to it that I think a lot of projects nowadays set aside and for the use of like AI, for example. Let me just take that away. There we go. So yeah, always willing to support independent projects, indie shows, games, you name it. The Digital Circus, to me, I didn't really know much about Glitch going into the show. I just knew that it was another animated show being put onto YouTube. And I'm not going to go into any of the other stuff surrounding creation of these projects, but one thing I will say is that the storytelling is everything I could possibly imagine a independent project should be. A story that a creator wants to tell. And I think that's, the real underlying thing that makes those shows so good. It's not a big company making a movie or a show for something that they want to make money off of. It's somebody making a show, a story, a game, a book, because they want to. That they feel they genuinely have a story they have to share. That's the kind of storytelling I love. So, just going to be a quick stream today. I want to be able to have time to get all my other ducks in a row before the premiere. So I thought I'd try to get some old stuff done, like this comic page. It was supposed to be done maybe a week ago, maybe 2 at this point. And first of all, can I just say huge thanks to everyone's patience over on Blue Sky. I know it can get a little annoying to see update after update with no finished result. But like I said, creativity has been a bit of a battle this week, and not necessarily for the reason I thought it would be. I mentioned on last stream that I've been going through what I thought was a creative burnout. Just when you push yourself too hard and art becomes more of a chore than it was meant to be. At its core, creativity is meant to be fun, not something that we force ourselves to do for the sake of it. And I try and remember that as I go into stuff like this. Well, I had a completely different problem this week. I don't know why, but I felt inspired to work on not one, but 3 different projects all at once. The first being this comic page, the second being an animatic that was supposed to come out in April, and the third being a mini short that was posted on YouTube about a couple days ago. For one thing, another huge thanks to anyone who's seen that short. I never thought I would have a video that was seen more than, say, 1,000 times. But the fact that over 20,000 people have seen this short truly blows me away. And that's nothing to do with me. That's all you. So thank you. Yeah, and the fact is, I made it on a whim as well, because creativity has been batting back and forth, wanting to make new things. When I don't necessarily think I should or I can, it's weird. Because one thing, I felt inspired to create, but I also wasn't grounded into anything I wanted to stick to for long periods of time. I had to pick one. Personally, I think this is where discipline kind of comes in and helps us be better at creating. Because while it is fun to think of new ideas and make new projects, at the end of the day, it's good that we pick something that we truly want to pursue to the very end. Because if we don't pursue something to the end, we just have a long list of projects that we touch maybe every now and then instead of every day. And now I'm not saying it's incorrect to have a story that's broken up into multiple different segments. Like, let's say you're making a comic, but you also wanted to make an animation. You also had a bunch of concept art you wanted to do. That is completely fine. If that's something that you want to do, you go do it. Just pace yourself. Don't think you need to do all of it at once. I hope that makes sense. That was the mistake I made this week. I wanted to make 3 things. And granted, one of them was finished, but the only reason it was finished was because I sat down and actually completed it, rather than going off and starting a 4th project. Honestly, very thankful I didn't get to the 4th project. Would have been too much work for a single person to do. Which brings me actually to a really good point. When we create something, and we feel a passion to create it, like we just feel excited. While I do think a lot of people, and me included, strive to want to create in the moment of this spark of motivation, I think it's tempting, though, to keep pushing. And I don't really agree with that either. That's how burnout is created. That's when you push yourself too far and now you don't feel like creating for you anymore. You just feel like you have to create. It's a balancing game, a tipping scale, and it's our job as creatives who want to create, but not for the other people, but for ourselves. We want to create because we love creativity. So don't take the love away from it. Okay, so that was like a really, really long rant. I'm telling you, I'm so excited. I just love art of storytelling. And not just mine. I love seeing people get truly passionate about what they enjoy. And I'm not gonna admit, that rubs off onto the stories. When someone doesn't care for what they're making, people will see it. Now today, I'm probably spilling a million words an hour out of excitement. Not for my story, but for the creative works. But that's okay, I think. I will tone it back a little bit, though. But yeah, you know how I mentioned that the whole creativity thing has been up and down? Yeah, let's talk about the negative side of this spark of motivation. Despite the idea that I wanted to constantly create new things, I had trouble finding the motivation to put an end to the work. Like, if I wanted to actually get the project done, that's when it became a problem. I'm not actually really sure what caused it. Because it wasn't that I didn't want to create the project. I did. Looking at it made me kind of sad that it wasn't finished, like this comic page today. But the immediate drive to get to work and put some art down for the day just didn't happen. Which is one of the reasons why this Animatic, that we'll see here later in the stream, and this comic page were not completed when I thought they would be. And I don't know, maybe it comes from having too many projects. Do any of you all have big projects, or maybe even multiple projects you're working on? 3, I think, is the most I've ever done at a time. You know, actually, yeah, I think 3. I'm about to say 4, but I don't know if that one counts as a project. I'm trying to get a shadow around this bush. You know, something I've been experimenting a little bit as well, and this may or may not come from the spark of motivation. But one of the goals I had for this year was to try and push myself to a creative limit. What can I or can I not learn? Well, I'll answer that question for you right now. You can learn any medium of art you'd like. Just, don't expect to be immediately good at it. For me, it was this color theory idea, where how people use different types of color from multiple sides of the scale. Here, I'll show you. This right here, this is the harmony wheel. This is complementary colors. Right now, I'm using this blue cyan color. However, if I wanted to use a color that complements it, it would be this kind of rusty red. That's complementary. Now, there is a lot more that goes into the overall use of, say, color theory in art, but I am not the person you should come to figure that out. Because, well, I'm learning too. I will talk a little bit about it, though. One of the things I used it for was this piece. My background, the shadow at least, is blue. Because I want the sky to have more of a red color. So, to contrast with the blue, I made sure to get the red color for the sky and the lighting, while the shadow, the cool parts, are all going to be in this blue color. Speaking of which, let's check our settings. I like to keep a little bit of a setting on hand to let me know what I need to do for each picture. This one is 56. A little piece of advice for complicated shading or lighting. Write down what percentages you need for opacity and multi-layers and add, because if you don't do this, you'll find that your pictures won't look as consistent. There we go, 56. Now let's clean up our shadow. I'm putting down a base because I want my base to be mostly the blue shadow color, and now I'm going to cut into it using the lasso tool to not only break up the shapes, but make the shadow look more realistic. Shadows don't just sit on the surface, they kind of wrap and follow the indentions. You can use it to show depth, like this tree bark. And now we got a tree. And we're going to do the same to the rock. I want the rock to look as if it is partially in the sun. But yeah, why I wanted to learn color theory, or at least bits and pieces of it, was because when I create a colored picture such as this, I have a tendency to, what's a good way to put it? I have a tendency to use pretty saturated colors, dull colors that don't make a lot of sense. Why is the shadow doing that? Let me fix this real quick. But yeah, I have a tendency to stick to saturated colors. That's something I've done since I was little. Don't know why. But they never looked right, if that makes sense. It kind of had this weird... Yeah, I don't know if I can fix it now. We'll just slap some color on and hope it fixes itself. I think what's causing this is the fact that the background has a gradient, so it's gonna look unusually dark. Yeah, it's a gradient thing. Okay, I can fix that. Just means a lot of scribbling. We might have to damage the tree a little bit. But yeah, they looked kind of flat, and never really looked like the colors were adding anything. It just kind of looked like I slapped them on there because I wanted the colors, not because I felt the color had a purpose. Which is when I stumbled across color theory. I mean, I knew a little bit about it going into it, but not enough that I would say actually added any to the work. It was just, I knew about it and didn't want to learn how to do it. Mainly because it's just so complicated. Like, a lot of it, when you hear the word color theory, I'm sure a lot of people just cringe right now. It is such a complicated, widespread topic that I myself still do not know everything about it. I think we'll try with this shadow right now and see what it looks like. But yeah, it's just such a wide spread of information that it's difficult to know where to start. Let's grab this. I hope that makes sense. Oh, I see. So it's creating a line over there. Okay. We can fix this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the cool color as it is, and I'm going to grab its opposite, which is this red. It's a little brighter. It's the same type of red, but it's a little brighter because it's going to be our place for light. And I'm going to use it like this. Make it heavier on this side because this is where the sun's coming from. Did I just say thrum? Where the sun's coming from, my bad. Keep this side blue. Add some red. But yeah, now watch what this does. When I take away the normal layer and turn it into an add layer. Oh, I accidentally colored on. Let me attach them. Real quick. Dramatic reveal. There we go. See how the colors look different now? We have one side that's blue, one side's red. Your eyes are probably drawn more to the red than the blue because everything else is already kind of blue. That is color theory. Isn't that interesting? You're drawn to what you see is different in the picture. No, it's probably like 35 or something. Let me check check the sheet. It says 32. That was close. Yeah, but it's just another form of storytelling. And I think that's what drew me to color theory. It's just such an interesting concept. Now let's fix this little spot over here by using the little brush. And we're just gonna get that line to go away. Perfect. Okay, so it needs a bit more shadow, and I think I'm going to take a little bit more off of this side. So I learned color theory. Not in its entirety, but definitely gave it a shot. One thing that I've given a try this week, that it's very, very out of my usual medium, and honestly, I needed it. Just the change of pace is good occasionally. And in this week, I decided to take on the art of clay sculpting. My sister dabbles in clay sculpting. Something that she stumbled on a few years back and has absolutely fallen in love with. Well, I wasn't doing anything the other afternoon. I think my iPad had ran out of battery, so I was just kind of sitting there bored. And I noticed that she had these large cords of armature wire. Now, this is probably the only bit of clay making that I understood, was that armature wire was used to make a statue. It keeps, kind of think of it like bone structure. It's used to keep the statue standing. Well, this particular armature wire was used in the creation of her first clay sculpture. This monstrous looking pair of jaws. And of course, you know, I love monsters. I love animals. I think it's really cool. So I got the crazy idea in my head about my new character from the Silver Wings book called Ranja. And I was like, I want to make a cat. I want to make a big monster looking cat out of clay that I could physically hold. So I went to asking her if I could use her supplies. She sat down with me, and we built out the armature for this monster, Ranja. It's not exactly the prettiest thing. I have a photo I can't show right now because, well, I'm not going through my photos to find it. It's not the prettiest thing on planet Earth, but it is still an attempt at armature. And it was so interesting to see the body of the creation come to life simply by building out a structure for it, a shape that the clay can hold. Now, one mistake I did make when building the armature was I didn't put enough base on it. What this means is that you're supposed to use tinfoil, or sometimes tape, but mostly tinfoil, to bulk up the structure. This way, it will be able to stand and not have to use as much clay in the future to hold it together or weigh it down. It's trying to make the statue as light as possible. Well, me, not knowing what I'm doing, figured I didn't need enough tinfoil to get the shape I want. I only wanted a cat, nothing serious. Well, fast forward to me now adding clay to the statue, and what happened was not only did I not have enough base in order to build out the muscle, I now had to build it entirely out of clay. Which is not good, considering that the more clay you add to a sculpture, the heavier it's gonna be. So that was fear number 1. Fear number 2 was the idea that I had no idea how to use any of the sculpting tools. I watched maybe one video on how to use the tools. And I do not recommend what I'm about to say, but that's just how I learn, is I watched the one video and dived straight into the sculpting. I learned hands-on instead of, asking and learning step by step. I didn't even start with a little piece of clay either. No, I got the whole statue out. And just said, I'm gonna do this first try. I did not do it first try. In fact, it took several hours just to get the body built out. It's not even done. At some point, we just built out a shape, and my sister suggested baking it already so that we wouldn't have to worry about it sitting overnight. And it's okay. I could add more to it. It's sitting right beside me, actually. Oh, but disaster struck this morning. We were literally sitting in here no more than maybe 5 minutes ago. My sister was running through ideas she has for this art project she's working on. I was sitting in this exact spot, looking at the statue. I went to grab it, I picked it up, and was commenting something about its structure and how I wanted to improve on it. Maybe, I don't know. And then it fell. It slipped out of my hands onto the floor. This beautiful statue that took me several hours to make fell. And even if it was really ugly looking to my perspective, I was devastated to find a crack in it. And we might be able to repair it, I just don't know if it's worth it. It's really unbalanced and, like I said, kind of ugly. And it's very tempting at this point just to throw it out and try again. I might keep it just for, memory's sake. So I can hold it up and say, first statue. But I don't know, man. Even if it was kind of ugly, it would hurt so much to watch it fall. What also hurts is these shadows. My goodness. I don't really need shadows this detailed for a mini comic. I don't like how it looks without it. It just needs some more depth. Whoops. My bad. Honestly, I think this is one of the reasons why the comic is taking so long. Not only did I just start the coloring really today, but the idea of these shadows, I'm very particular about the shadows. Not so much these ones. When I do shadows on the ground, I'm a bit more rough with them. Speaking of mini comics, I've been thinking some about the work that goes into them. While I do enjoy and love making these mini stories and having the opportunity to share them with you, it's just my passion for art has been drifting in another direction. I wouldn't say it's saying, no, stop comics. No, I love comics. That's not the problem at all. My problem, actually, comes in the idea that my desire to create the mini comics is dwindling, while the desire to make my main webcomic is growing. I mean, this is kind of the whole point why I made the mini comics. It was never meant to be long-term. It was just to dabble my feet in comics again after years of not touching them. But as I worked longer on this mini comic, I realized that my motivation was switching gears, going to the main story with Clay and his humble beginnings, rather than stay and work on these mini shorts. Now, I'm far from completing the script. I wouldn't work on a comic without a script. Maybe I would work on a comic if it had like 2 or 3 chapters written out in a script, and then I can just write the rest of the script later, but it's not quite ready. But I think very soon I'm going to be changing gears here. I'm going to be changing a lot of things, actually. I dabbled a little bit in a new form of video about a month ago, I think. Well, it might be 2 months. I don't know. Anyway, I dabbled in a new form of video a couple months ago, and while it was fun to make, my desire to continue the series is getting more pressing as I want to work on the main comic. Of course, I have like a season final building and all that stuff for it. I'm not just gonna walk away and leave it in the dark. But this is what we do, self-discipline. It's what I was talking about earlier. I want to make that comic. I want to focus a lot of my attention onto bringing a story into the world that I'm proud of. Not a story that I expect people to read, but a story that I expect to enjoy, to love, and to maybe find other people that want to create their own stories, who want to read the story. That's art to me. Creating for you first and foremost, while drawing in people of the same like-mindedness. Now, enough of this philosophical conversation. Let's talk a little bit about what we are doing right here, right now. You remember these guys, maybe. This is Theodore and Robert, better known to the Ivar world as Robodad. That's Robert's name. Theodore is just the guy who helps him. Calling him assistant, though, feels kind of lame, because he's not a henchman or a minion. Those are what the robots are for. He's a good friend of Robert's, and I kind of want that to reflect not only in this little mini short, but in stories to come. I don't want Theodore to be looked at as, just the muscle man, the guy there to do the heavy lifting. There's something more genuine between him and Robert that I would love to explore as the stories go in. Something a bit more than just traditional henchmen. Now I'm trying to decide if I need a shadow back there. Maybe we can break one up like this. Little tip about grass. I find that if you break shadows in this weird wavy pattern, it sometimes helps. Not always. We're experimenting right now to see if it does. But grass, for some reason in art, is very unclear on shadow, because if you were to shine light into grass, you'll be creating multiple shadows. So I'm trying to create the illusion of that while maintaining, my sanity. I don't want to be driven insane by shadows. Okay, let's put this under the lighting layer. Yeah, that looks much better. Don't be afraid to move around your multi-layers, your shadows, your lighting, your color dodge, all that stuff. Sometimes you'll find this makes a big difference from when it's under the light to when it's over the light. This is more harsh, when if I put it under the light, it blends with the colors better. I might adjust it slightly, so let me just do that real quick. There we go. Then now this should do it for the background. But here comes the challenging bit. I need to combine these two parts of the background. One is connected to a layer above, and the other one is not. So we're going to touch the layer above first, I think. So then I can separate them. Okay, it's going to be harder than I thought. Yeah, it's connected to that, so... I got an idea. If I do invert, yeah, there we go. If I use invert on an old... Okay, so what I'm doing is when you select something on Procreate, you have an option to invert what you're selecting. Meaning, instead of your item being selected, it's selecting everything on the outside of it. I'm going to use this to erase this bush. Not all of it, but just some of it so I can see more of the sky. And now that that's erased, I'm going to come down here and do the same, but with this blue color. Let me take that off, steal the blue. And now we're going to do the same to this background piece. I'm trying something a little different with this page. I wanted it to have a transition between two large shots without taking away from the comic. I think it's working, but we'll see. We shall see. Okay, so that's the background done. Now let's combine it and move on to the characters. The characters, there's attaching of the bush and them. Now this is going to be a little bit of uncharted territory. I have not touched the characters yet, so let's just try what we did with the background and see if it works with them too. Because sometimes the shading and lighting you had on everything else may or may not have to change on the character. It's a little easier though, because I can just do this. Let's outline everyone. Oh, we forgot a part of the bush. I will go back and get that. Okay, what was the color thing again? 56. Yeah, we'll probably get to the animatic part here pretty soon. I wanted to have time for both, but this shading and lighting is taking a little longer than I thought it would. Ooh, whoops. Okay, what I'm doing now is I'm creating an outline for the character. I don't want to forget where the light is coming from though. Because while looks like I'm just outlining the general shape of him, I also have to remember the light is coming from this direction. And this will be important when the shadow gets added, if we add it. So if I end up realizing that I would much prefer just this blue color, that works as well. Art is just a lot of trial and error. Don't be afraid to experiment a little. Actually, I might have to do 2 layers of shading on these goggles. Hold on. Well, binoculars, I mean. Do you ever just draw something and have absolutely no idea how it's supposed to be drawn? But at the same time, you're a little bit too lazy to go actually grab the ref? Because I don't ever grab a reference sheet or even a reference for items. I mean, I should, and I've been getting better at it. But for these binoculars, I just kind of went off what I was aware of when I drew them as a kid, not necessarily how I'm supposed to do them now. But yeah, am I the only person that does that? Who knows? Okay, this sleeve is going to be tricky. It's very closed in to this part of the wall, so I don't want to do all the shading, so we're going to cut it into little pieces like this. Remember to make sure your shadows wrap. I'm always going to say that. Make sure they wrap around the character, not just hug the character. I want to actually see the effect as if the light is coming down. It's going to have different effects on items too. Like for instance, this apron is probably going to be a little higher than the other. Because it's a little thicker. Okay, let's fix this bush. But yeah, I think that's as much as I've completed so far in my creative journey. Claymaking, creative arts such as color theory. I might go into animal anatomy soon. Because one animal that I've been really, really wanting to draw, but I have no confidence in whatsoever, is horses. I love horses. Not necessarily drawing them, but as an animal. They're just so interesting. I mean, my sister actually had a pretty bad encounter with a horse a few years ago. We were with family on one of those horse riding trails. It was a safe one. And, well, I say that, but then we had this encounter. But it wasn't anyone's fault. I don't think even the trail guides knew it was there. But while we were out, we were all traveling in that single file line formation that they typically have at these places. However, the first horse stepped over what we presumed to be a hornet nest. Like, bees and wasps. Because the second horse to come over it disturbed the ground again. And now think about this in like 5 horses in a line. What do you think's gonna happen to the people in the back? Exactly. The bees were angry. So, on my sister, the ever unfortunate, had the opportunity to know what it felt like to have a horse freak out and just take off running. Thankfully, the instructor was very helpful in this situation, knew exactly what to do and stop the horse. But we haven't been able to get her to be around a horse again since then. Part of me understands. The other side of me just really misses going out to see horses. And while I could do it by myself, it's just not as fun when she's not there. I like doing things as a family, not individual. It makes me look lonely. I suppose I can get friends to do it. Something to think about. But yeah, I always wanted to draw a horse. But one part I don't like about them is the weird joint in their leg. I can't really describe it without a good picture, but if anybody here has ever drawn a horse, you should understand these feelings. Is that it's a weird bald socket joint, and it sticks out on the leg, kind of forms this ankle bend. And for whatever reason, I cannot draw it. I've tried and eventually gave up. But that's not the point of this year. This year is to keep trying until proven otherwise. So maybe in the coming future that's something we'll practice. Hey, maybe I can even stream it. That way you all could watch me suffer to learn something in real time. I think that would be very entertaining. Maybe we can even make a game out of it. But yeah, there's horses I could learn. I guess I could practice birds. I mean, I think I have a pretty good grasp about wings, not necessarily the bird itself. So that's always something I could learn. Birds, maybe. Oh, that's one. Backgrounds. Who here has issues with backgrounds? I like to think that I've gotten a better grasp of them over the years, but I mean, some of you might be looking at this and thinking, you don't look like you have problems with backgrounds. What I'm talking about is presenting a background in a way that tells a story. Back to the storytelling part, get your hats on, we're going on a little bit of an expedition. So, Backgrounds are also an art of storytelling. It's not just putting something there and expecting it to cover the space. And while this is mostly the case in like TV shows, for example, an art of scenery storytelling is still an art. It's what helps us as creators give off a certain type of meaning in the work that you wouldn't otherwise get if it was just, a piece of art. Let's use this as an analogy. Let's say you want your character to be walking through a spooky, dark woods. And while you could just draw your character in dark woods and leave it at that, think about how you can use the environment to not only express fear, but also kind of express what your character's thinking. Maybe the tree branches come in and look like bars or even fingers, trapping them in the darkness. Maybe think about how much light is present. Yeah, all these things are what make art interesting to me. Just the tiny little details. I'm going to try and fix this little pathway we can see back here by using the same color as the bush. There we go. Now to fix the gradient. Now I don't know if there's going to be a perfect fix for this. Yeah, we're just going to have to live with it. Okay. That works too. Okay, so that's the first shadow done. Let's move on to the next one. Actually, what time is it? 3:40. You know what? Let's go work on the animatic. I think we've deserved a break. All right, let's work on Clay. Clay's animatic. We are beginning a new frame today. This one being of him waking up in the morning. As cliche as it sounds, it actually plays a role in the story of which I want to tell with this piece. Clay doesn't necessarily take life as serious as he probably should. And as a result, this affects how he's going to respond in this situation of waking up. Something as simple and mediocre as this can say a lot about your character. Same with a lot of simple things in their lives. Oh boy, we're back to the whole witness me draw some same line over and over again. I hope we missed it. Speaking of color theory earlier, I'm doing an experiment with animatics. A poll I did twice now. One asking the audience about whether or not they enjoy colored animatics versus the traditional gray and white animatics. The overwhelming amount said they enjoyed color animatics. Good thing, because I enjoy them too. But this week particular, with this animatic, I wanted to try adding not just color to an animatic, but a color that tells a story. And yeah, I know we're going back into the storytelling thing, but it is true. So many aspects of art are used to tell a story. And when we understand them, we can use them to our advantage to truly build up what we think is the best way to present the story. And honestly, the most fun part about this is the fact that it's extremely customizable. It's like a video game. You don't have to use all of them. You can use bits and pieces of what you learn along the way. Like for this example, animatics traditionally don't have a lot of fancy color on them. They're just meant to get ideas down and present them to an audience, usually with music or movie audios, or even video game audios. However, what an animatic can still do is use color as a way of sharing this information with other people. Great example. My audience has selected a gold color for this animatic particular. Gold is actually, the reason why I presented this one as an option, is gold is meant to represent, joy, fortune, happiness, bright, like the sun, brightness. Now, while a kind of a greeny gold would probably be a suggestion of like sickness and unwell character. So we're using a bright, summer looking gold. Here, I'll show you. This is what I'm talking about. we're using a bright and hopeful gold for the color palette of the comic. Now, before I even say anything, what do you think the balance to gold is? The balance to gold is blue. So if I want to use a complement in the story to show the polar opposites between what is hopeful and what is sad, we use blue. In just these two colors, I am aiming to tell Clay's story. Not just him getting up in the morning, but a representation of how he feels. The gold being what he wants life to be, and the blue being the more depressing current state of his life. Because, no story is without conflict. And especially, a story cannot function without your character wanting something more out of life. While I don't necessarily agree anymore with much of Disney storytelling recently, the original movies understood this the best. I think they even termed a name for it, called the Disney I Want song. Because every character's unhappy about something. And it's that unhappiness that eventually drives them into wanting something more, and eventually the plot happens. I do think it's possible to have a story where the character doesn't want life to change. That would be what we call an inciting incident, something that throws the character out of balance and now they must cope with it. But to me personally, when we desire something, it's a bit more compelling. So how I would probably say you could write that story, if you want your character to already enjoy life, you'll still have to put them through something. Like, let's say their life has been disrupted and now they lost all the stuff they enjoy. Well, their desire now would probably be to have it back. So yeah, that's what we're going to use color theory here for. Though right now it's a lot of boring line art. We're not going to have much color this time around. Let me fix this line. There we go. Good old Clay. Clay's in need of a haircut. I know they say that you should draw like a turnaround of your character, like a 180 view of them to work on consistency. And while I will admit that is a very helpful practice, I'm not the best at being consistent at making a turnaround sheet. I don't know if this is an effect of it or not, but Clay's hair has gotten really, really long. Has anyone else's characters had like a part that just magically got bigger? Like, let's say hair, for example. Did their hair get longer? Does the character's tail get longer? What about shorter? Does it ever get shorter? I don't know if I've ever had a character that's had a, like, say, fur or detail that's gotten shorter. I think most of the time it just gets longer. And now we'll just leave it like that. So that's panel 1. I hope this gives perspective to how long these can actually take. Because, we're probably not going to get to the coloring today when it comes to actual Animatic work. But hey, we did complete something. We got the background done on the comic page, and now we're working on adding some line art to the much needed progress of the Animatic. The Animatic of Clay right now is, I believe, it's the project that got neglected during my whole pick one and stick to it. Not because I didn't want to work on the Animatic, but because it had the most work that needed to be done. And sometimes, as someone who likes to create art, I think it's good to sit back and work on a project that's a bit easier from time to time. Not only does that add a success under your belt, it also just gives you the breathing room not to think so much about it. Like right now, line art. It's a bit more pressing to me than any other part of the Animatic. I much prefer to be on the coloring stage, but I'd much rather be on the line art phase than be on the sketching phase, as sketches can take me anywhere from just a couple weeks to being, what's a good way to put it? being months even. I could be working on line art and sketching for months, when the coloring portion probably wouldn't take so long if it was just coloring. But hey, we don't just make art in a day. Sometimes it takes weeks. It can take years even. But that's why I think it's good to allow ourselves to create what we want to create. Because if you're going to be working on something for a really long time, it better be something that you enjoy. And I love animation. Personally, real quick life update. I think part of me has forgotten what creating for me is some days. A great example being that little comic series. While I do love making that little shorts talking about how the progress of my webcomic series is going, I began thinking more about how I can present information to an audience rather than just enjoying the process of making the animatics and the comics by myself. Now don't get me wrong, I love each and every one of you, but sometimes I just need time for me. And that's one reason why we didn't get a video today. One, because I've been all over the place this week working on multiple different things. I just did not have time for editing. But B, I just wanted to remind myself why I make comics. Not for anyone else but me. And if someone gets enjoyment out of it, that just makes it 10 times better. Now, I know I said I'd be done with the whole the inspirational, well, I guess it is a little bit psychological mumbo jumbo. I said I'd be done with it, but I'm not. I think now we are, though. Trying to get this jaw right. Clay's always been tricky to draw mouth-wise. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the shape of the jaw. I know it's one of the pieces I did neglect to do for him in his current designs. I just kind of slapped a generic shaped jaw on him and never really went back and fixed it. It's fine. It is officially going to be just a couple hours until the episode. So excited. Yee. I actually can't quite describe to you the level of anticipation I'm having for this new episode of the Digital Circus. This is not really a podcast per se, but I don't know why this story's just really grown on me. Most of Glitch's other productions haven't really been something that I enjoyed, but this one in particular, the writing, the characters, the setup, while confusing in some aspects and a little weird, seems to be right up my alley for things that I enjoy. But I think something that truly stuck out to me, and this is just a huge props to its creator, was that the writing isn't just a story. It's all the little tiny details that the creator put in to make sure that not only some parts are genuine, but the idea that it can capture foreshadow, emotion, problems, and all this interesting storytelling stuff that I can't quite put into words. All I know is that we're coming down to the wire for the last 2 episodes, I think. And I've been following along with this story since the very beginning. So whatever happens, I'm gonna be there. Alright, let's name our frames real quick. This is Clay 1, and this one will be Clay 2. Oh, I'm gonna get a quick water break real quick. I'm extremely parched. Remember to hydrate. Always hydrate. Even artists need water. I know it doesn't seem like that some days. Sometimes it feels like us artists just crawl out of a hole every now and then for some sunlight, and then we immediately go back in. The light burns. Let's fix this eye. It's a little lopsided in the sketch, so I'm going to try and correct it now. There we go. Now let's move it over. Let's try that. Yeah, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, the show. Super excited. I think actually, this is kind of a funny story. We got in a habit during our vacation last year, I think. Yeah, family vacation last year of watching the new episodes of The Digital Circus while eating a grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup. I know it sounds really weird, but it is not only a great combo, but two, the idea that it's just so fun to snack on while we're watching the show. So that's what I'll be having this evening. And unfortunately, no, it is not a homemade tomato soup. It is just a tomato soup from a can. Because I am extremely basic when it comes to my personal life. I don't need the big fancy stuff. I just want to eat my canned tomato soup. My grilled cheese, however, my sister makes the grilled cheese. It has been pretty basic too, but I'm looking into like maybe adding fresh cheese and all that stuff. Like, you know, shred your own cheese from a block and put it on the sandwich. See if I can actually achieve the ultimate goal of stringy cheese. How does everyone else like their grilled cheese? I heard there's like a debate about grilled cheese every now and then. You like it just like grilled in a pan? Or do you want those grill marks on it? I love the grill marks. I just can't figure out how to do it. I'm gonna fix this jaw a little bit. Gotta fix that eye too, it's a little lopsided. You know, full closure right now. Look, if you ever wanted to do art streaming like I'm doing right now, just be aware that it is not like game streaming. I figured it was gonna be similar to it, where, you know, the whole, you're working on something, you entertain an audience, no problem. But art requires a lot of concentration. I'm surprised anyone can do this. I mean, even with video games, I can't imagine trying to keep my head open not only for entertaining, but the idea that I also have to draw something at the same time. Well, actually, if you're gaming, you're playing a game, but I just feel like it takes a lot of brain power. Something of which I do not have. I'm an artist. I'm not a math whiz. Or a critical thinker. Though I do think a whole lot about the human psyche, which is something I didn't think I'd go into. Honestly, I think that just comes with the territory of creating art. You have like a habit of wanting to deep dive into real research to not only understand your character, but you can get completely sidetracked in how that information affects other people. Great example is a character my sister made. I won't spoil anything, it's her story to tell, but let's just say she had a character once that presented some rather negative attributes to the audience for the first time ever. Most people were under the impression that, you know, she's a hero. But then we find out that heroes are perfect. And surprisingly enough, the people receiving it was very fascinating. Some people, of course, loved the story, but were also a bit split now about the character. And others were really mad at the character to a point that I was slightly concerned. But it just shows us how much when you're invested in something, that you not only care about how this character behaves and acts, but it also now affects you as a person. Yeah, that's what I mean by like human psychology. I don't know why, but when you go into storytelling, you study a lot of weird things. Not just humans. You study animals, you study trauma, you study things that probably shouldn't be on your search history but are. Art is a never-ending learning curve. Even when you're a professional, even when you've been drawing since as long as I have, I think I've been drawing since kindergarten, you are always learning. And that is something that is truly special to me about art. Honestly, I'm surprised that we even get bored. There's just always something to do. Now it seems our time has come to an end. Shame too. We just got into the meat of true storytelling and what makes it stand out to us as a medium. But alas, it appears that I have to go. Not only do I have a few things I need to get off my plate before the episode comes out, but I also need to go check on my dog. Don't worry, he's fine. He's just been a little bit needy this morning, and my sister has been wrangling him all morning. So I will see you in the next stream. Keep making stories, and we'll be back very soon.